All right, so welcome back to Playing It Safe, and I am excited that Jorge was able to join me again. And we were talking, and you said you wanted to talk about confidence. Can you tell me why you brought that subject up?
Yeah, I think confidence, especially a lot of times in our Hispanic culture, but just overall, um, there is a lot of confusion as to what it is and what it isn't. I think and we'll talk about it, but I think confidence it's a byproduct of essentially self love and self care, right? And you know what is it that is gives a person confidence versus what it's something that can be harmful to a person, a group of individuals, and I just think it's an important thing to talk about.
Yeah, no, I totally agree because when you brought up the topic, I thought about it some more, and I always get people telling me, "Wow, you were like very confident," and I every time I hear that, I say thank you, but then I'm also like I'm a little confused sometimes. Like
Right.
okay, like that's cool. So I just don't understand. Like, was it through my work aspect? I guess it just depends on what environment I'm in,
Yeah.
but that's been a thing I've heard quite a
Right.
bit about the confidence.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so when you're talking about confidence, you mentioned it being like even in the culture thing. What do you mean by that?
So I think like let's go with the comment that you made, right? Like people saying, "Hey, you're very confident." I think there's two ways to look at that. There's obviously kind of giving you praise for your work and everything you've accomplished, but I also think there's a little bit of projection, right? Like, oh, maybe what part of what they're saying is, I really wish I could be more like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the self care and self love part come into play, right? Right. So being confident doesn't mean I'm never gonna make mistakes. I'm never gonna be wrong, right? Being confident just means I'm gonna be okay, right? Like I'm gonna try my best, and I'm gonna be okay either way,
Yeah.
right? And if I fail, I'm gonna try again, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
I fail and that's not where I'm supposed to be, then I'm gonna readjust and go, right? So to me, that's what confidence is, right? Like don't be afraid, not being afraid of failure, but the cultural aspect of it, and I'll tell you kind of my personal experience, especially when I was going through school, being first generation, right? There were people, right? Sometimes family members, sometimes just people close to me that along the road would say, well, out of the blue, right? They would say, well, you're not more than me,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not more than me because you're going to school. Which I never once have ever
Yeah.
said, hey,
Make it better.
a degree makes you a better person, which it doesn't, right? It actually absolutely doesn't make you a better person. It makes you better prepared for some things,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, right? Depending on who you are and how you take it. But it has nothing to do with being a good human being. Um, and so that's part of the cultural aspect of it, right? And I think there's also a confusion between thinking, okay, well, you think you're better than me, right? But then there's also the part where I think people think confidence is, I'm gonna walk into this room and I'm gonna show everybody that I'm better than them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single person's gonna know that I'm better than them,
Yeah.
right? This kind of, and that's what I meant by toxic, right? And I've seen them both, at least
Yeah.
growing up, right? Growing up, I've seen them both. And when in reality, I really think it's none of those things. It's just I believe in me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what I really think is by believing in yourself and whatever that means for each person, you actually help the greater good, right? The community by saying, look, that person believes in themselves, kind of like the person that said, hey, that's really cool.
Yeah.
The next step is how can I do that for me? Not
Mm-hmm.
that I want to be like anybody else, but how can I do that for me so I can achieve my goals, so I can state of mind or whatever it is that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I like how you bring that up because I feel that it took years to even feel that I can, you know, accomplish things in the fact that everyone used to always laugh at me. I was kind of like the butt of all jokes. Kind of still am, but like for various other reasons now. But I would tell people what I'm trying to do
Right.
and, people who would like, that's cool. Yeah, that's cute.
Right.
But also as a cultural aspect, I was always taught to like you got to work hard, you got to work your ass off, but be quiet while you're doing it. Just work hard, shut your mouth and
Right.
don't say anything. And by doing that, which I did, I realized that man, this sucks.
Yeah.
I'm doing all the work, and people are getting all the credit for all the
Right.
work that I've done. And one time I think I was working at, I think I was working at Jeffy Lube. That's right. I used to work there. Okay. It's not a promotion. I used to work there. And the owner, who was my boss, but he owned a couple of Jeffy Lubes, he said, "Oh, Veronica, the higher up you get, it doesn't mean the people are necessarily smarter. You're just getting paid more to do less work, you know, and that everyone else is really the brains behind everything. You're just the one that's there to look good in a sense." And I was like, I think that's so true. And it was only because I would see, all the people getting paid way more money than I was. Here I am making minimum wage. And I mean, obviously I was a Jeffy Loop, so that's a different story. But, I'm thinking about like all my jobs and everything I've been
Right.
doing, or internships, and seeing the people behind the scenes who really are the ones that know everything. And then the bosses come in and kind of like, "Good job, good job, Jorge, good job, Veronica,
Yeah.
good job, Maria, good job." Like, no, they really didn't say good job, by the way, but they just took credit for everything,
Right.
and never acknowledging every behind the scenes, or behind the work. And so um I remember a moment where I started speaking up a little bit, and it backfired a lot. I would get talked to by my boss, and I had to really make decisions, like, and leave security jobs. Like, I used to be a social worker. Yes, I hated it, and that's the reason why I ultimately left. But I was actually harassed every day by my boss, because
Really.
she didn't like me being confident. She actually called me out, like,
Right.
for, like, "Who do you think you are? What are the clothes you wear?" And I'm like, "I'm wearing a 3-piece suit." I'm so confused. It was a Burlington Coat Factory 3-piece suit, but still, it was my quality
Right.
of suit. And I had to realize that I was being harassed, and I think it was just that, people get intimidated,
Right.
and from that point on, I realized that the more I speak out, the more higher I go up, the more I intimidate people. And so that was one thing. I think that when you mention confidence, a lot of times too, people see that, and
Right.
they're intimidated by it.
Yeah, like I mentioned, it's a projection, right? It's a
Yeah.
projection a lot of times of whatever it is that's going on through people's lives, whether it's insecurity or whether it's maybe past failures, right? Like, I
Mhm.
used to be like that, but then it backfired for me, so I just didn't speak up anymore after that, right? And that goes back to everything we were saying, like learning from failures and things like that, right? When I worked at a school, I won't mention the school. It's not my current job, but it's a former school I used to work at. Um, you know, I was 100% confident of my math skills and what I knew, but the people there didn't like what I was wearing. I had long hair at the time,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, and to them, that was more important than whatever
Mhm.
I could teach the students, right? Um, and I wasn't okay with it, and I ended up leaving that job for my current job at COD, right? And that made all the difference in the world, right? And so that goes back to that whole idea of self-care and self-love,
Yeah.
right? Being confident, it's a byproduct
Yeah.
of understanding, you know what, it's not that I'm better than anyone else. It doesn't matter. What matters is I know what I'm worth, right? And what matters is that I know I'm worth of great things, right? I'm
Yeah.
gonna work real hard for them, right? And nobody can take that away from me. Nobody, it doesn't matter how insecure other people are. I'm not going there to take anyone else's job. I'm there to do my best, right?
Mhm.
And wherever that takes me, wherever that goes, that's what I want, right? And to me, that's confidence, right? It's not about showing people off. It's not about, you know, being the boss favorite. It's nothing to do with any of that, right?
Yeah.
It has something to do with every day waking up and saying I'm gonna do my best, right? And I want good things to come my way.
It's not about stepping on people and
Right.
getting that way. But you mentioned you left.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, it's a buildup of all the conversations we have, right?
Right.
Most people won't leave.
They won't.
It's
Right.
it's too scary. That you're in a safe area when you have job security,
Right.
but then you are compromising your
Your
self integrity,
right.
your self
Your
value.
morals.
Yes,
Yeah.
and therefore, when you do that, you then lose any confidence you had left.
You lose more than a paycheck.
Yes.
There is no paycheck big enough that can replace what you're losing at that point.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember when I left, that was exactly the decision I made. I was like, there's no paycheck that can pay me for this. There's many other things that happened, but that was one of the main ones. Kind of judging people based on the way people looked, and being confident enough to say, you know what, I can probably find another job, even if I struggle a little bit, right? And I think that goes through for anybody, right? We make choices every day, right? And we make them out of confidence or lack of confidence, right? And we decide our future every day. And like I mentioned, this idea of self-love. What do you deserve? What do you think you deserve? And what do you think you learned so far, right? And and I think when people don't fulfill that, then we have like the stuff you were saying, right? Then we have the people that, hey, how come you're speaking up? How come you're doing that, right? And I think, when you get a group of confident people together, truly confident, healthy individuals, it's just people that are encouraging each other.
Yeah.
Right? It has nothing to do with, you see somebody else doing great things. Man, that's so good. I'm going to work real hard too, right? So that's very different versus, better than me. Who do you think you are? Right.
Oh, yeah, we get a lot of that. Now, first of all, I just wanted to do a disclaimer. Don't just go quit your job without a backup. Now we went and looked for backups before. You have to be strategic about your plan, but you also have to put in that extra energy to look for that stuff, to know you're confident. Because another thing, when people do switch and transition and look for stuff, a lot of people don't display their confidence in their resumes or cover letters either. And so it's like, your self-worth or the way you're feeling, it's not projected, because you're saying it's the way we project ourselves. It's not projected in the way you write too, because I get this so often. Jorge and I, we were part of this group that started helping mentoring with helping people in part-time jobs or looking to get into our type of careers, helping them with rewriting resumes, cover letters, and interviews. And the main thing is you got to talk about yourself. Right. And it's hard to talk. I mean, people think probably like oh yeah, she's confident. She can easily talk about how amazing she is. No, that's uncomfortable. That's super uncomfortable to talk about, and then to put it in writing. But I've learned that if this is your opportunity to say, listen, I'm the best there is, and you're not saying I'm the best because I'm better than you. You're just saying that I'm confident in my work ethics, that I will bring value to your company. It will benefit you. We will benefit each other if you hire me. And so I think that's a lot of times where people get stuck is we might get people writing to us and they're like, I did try to apply and I'm getting nothing. What do you say?
Yeah, I think there is a bit of, and I'll mention this because it's something I struggle with a lot. Sometimes there is a confusion between being humble, right, and being confident, right? Sometimes I used to see that as opposing forces, right? Like, I'm gonna be humble, and I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, it's nothing to do with that, right? You can be humble, you can be real humble, and be very confident as well, right? And I think there might be some of that, right? There might be a part where there's that little bit that's missing of saying, no, man, you're entitled. Like you deserve great things, right? Yeah. You work for them hard. This is what should happen, right? You deserve to be that great counselor, that great instructor, that great engineer, right? But you have to show it, right? Yeah. You have to put in whatever it is that you like to do, whatever experiences that you have, put those in writing, right? And display them, right? Through your writing, through your composure, through your personality. Some people also do it through their clothes, and that's perfectly fine. But understanding that all of those components, are part of the bigger picture that are you. Right? Yeah. You end up being like the package, right? Everything else is like little things that you can do here and there, right? Like when I was growing up, I was very much against dressing up for interviews, right? At my first interview, I got the job, but I was wearing shorts, and I was like, man, I must be real good if I got the job that way, right? But then after a while, it was, well, there's all these different aspects in which you can display your confidence, right? Yeah. Nothing wrong with wearing a nice suit once in a while. Nothing wrong with that. But see, myself, I used, if you talked to me 15 years ago, it would have been, no. But see, that's not showing how humble I am, Like, no, you're confusing the two.
That's true.
And I think that sometimes we undersell ourselves because we grew up, with family saying you gotta be humble, and that's true, right? You should remember where you come from, but it has nothing to do with how confident you should be.
And that's a great point, because now you're gonna go make me go shopping and by myself. I'll send my husband to you, be like, why did you tell her to go buy some new wardrobe? Okay, it's just because I think too, it's, yes, I'm very confident, and people have told me, because I honestly don't give a damn how I dress most times.
Right.
Mostly my mom tells me,
same way.
Mija, brush your hair before you go out, and I don't. But I think too, it's just that then it becomes those in your inner circle that start to get to you, because if I start displaying myself with dress and my confidence through my wardrobe as well, then we already have people already talking to us. Oh, you think you're better because look at me, oh, you got your education, and then now look at you with your your red bottom shoes. I still want a pair, but still, and I think that's maybe too, that's where people continue to humble themselves, but then they don't realize it spills over to when they're trying, when to be confident, when not to. And again, what Jorge's saying is that you can always be confident, but it does, some people might, accidentally make their confident, or think their confidence is making them not humble.
Right.
And that's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah. So that was definitely me, 15 years ago. I would have said, no, I'm not going to say this, I want to be humble. And even that's a little weird, right? To say, I want to be humble, so I'm going to do this. That should flow naturally as well. Yeah. Right. And, but it has nothing to do. It's not an opposing force to being confident. Yeah. Right. It has nothing to do with that. And you can display your confidence in many ways. People have different tastes. People do different things. Right. And like you can be really confident and a horrible human being. Okay. That's, and you can be really good, a really good person. It's also very confident. Right. And I just think sometimes, I guess, there's that need for kind of observing ourselves and giving ourselves a little bit of love and compassion, and say, well, where is it that I am? Where is it that I want to be? Right. And how am I going to get there? And it's confidence that kind of carries you through that. Right. And everything else, being humble, being kind, everything else comes with it. But as long as you're moving along on this path, otherwise you get stuck. And when you get stuck, you get bored. When you get bored, you get anxious, and kind of the whole idea is to keep learning. And when you get stuck, you kind of stop living, essentially.
Yeah. And I think too, one thing we have to make clear, doesn't matter, I believe that, you as an individual, you're awesome, you're nice, and like no one possibly can hate on Jorge. But the reality is that it doesn't matter how well you build up to this. We're not saying that you're not going to get people who hate on you, or who every time they can try to bring you down, because as we all know, misery loves company. And, one example I always think of, I won't say names specifically, but I had a gentleman much older who didn't graduate high school, which is fine. Again, education to me has nothing, and I've never once said anything about the education ever. I'm never a person that'd be like, oh, why don't you go back to finish high school? Never. No, it's not my business. Right. Would always make fun of me anytime I try to speak Spanish. Now, first of all, my parents, when I was younger, refused to. They only wanted me to speak English, because at that time they were afraid that I would be made fun of in school, and you don't want to have the kid with the accent. They come from a different generation, and I learned Spanish in high school, which it's like a Castilian Spanish,
Okay. Right.
So one day I called them out. I was like, hey, did you understand what I said? Yeah. Then why are you making fun of me? Doesn't matter that I said it with a English or white accent, however, because then I get the, oh, you sound like a white girl kind of thing. And ain't no offense to my white girls out there, but it would piss me off, because I'm like, this dude's trying to make me doubt myself, because then I went so many years where people would make fun of me, like, oh, look at you with your English accent. And then I'm like, well, then I'm not going to talk Spanish. I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the trap you want to avoid, right?
Yeah.
Because then that's how that kind of feeling perpetuates, right? The whole
Mhm.
idea you were asking about people maybe not putting everything into the resumes, right? That's exactly it, right?
Yeah.
It's a reflection of maybe stuff that happened in the past. Maybe people were made fun of, right?
Mhm.
Like when I came to this country, I didn't speak English, and people certainly, especially fellow Hispanics, made fun of that, right? Oh, look at
Mhm.
you, you don't speak English. And then I started speaking English, and oh, look at you, you have an accent, right? And there's always going to be some. Or there's
Yeah.
always going to be some. And I think the trick to that is to not take it personal, to understand it takes a lot of self-reflection, I think, but to understand that a lot of those comments, 99.9% of those comments, are more of a reflection of who people
Mhm.
are
Exactly.
rather than malice. There will be that one person that's, oh man, you just want to see the world burn. Maybe,
Mhm.
right? There'll be
Yeah.
that one person. But most of the other ones, it's just kind of, they're pretty much telling you something about them when they're
Mhm.
starting criticizing you and saying things and putting people down. There's usually something going on there.
And most times they don't realize that
Right.
they're doing it.
Right. There's no malice at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. And it's just interesting. It didn't stop till I called this person out, because it went on for years, y'all.
Right.
And I was just like, this mother effer, And finally, I was like, "Yo, you understood me. Then what the hell's the problem?"
Yeah.
And it only took me. I'm going to tell you why I speak Spanish, and I don't give a damn about what people say about my Spanish when I do speak it. I was at a doctor's visit. I don't even think I had children yet. I don't remember what I was there for. But the nurse, I heard her speak Spanish to somebody, and I smiled, and she goes, I don't know how we started this conversation, but, I was like, oh, yeah, I said something like, yeah, I speak Spanish, broken up a little bit, but I kind of get made fun of. And she goes, oh, sweetheart, it was this white lady. She goes, I get paid extra. That, my Spanish is not very good, but they understood, so I get paid extra. So you tell people you speak Spanish, you get paid extra. And I'm like, here is this lady who had a very thick English accent in her Spanish, and she didn't give a damn because she made extra money. And
Right.
she's like, listen, they understood me.
Right.
That's all that mattered.
Yeah.
And so that's what made me change my personality with that aspect.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example, right? Just switching the way you look at things, so you can either feel down because you're being made fun of because you speak language like Spanish with
Mm-hmm.
with an accent, or you can turn that around and say, well, I speak two languages,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what does that mean, right? So I think it matters a lot. I think also one thing that's really interesting, and maybe it could be a future podcast, and I think probably the person stopped making fun of you when you called them out, it's because you put a trigger on that habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you call it a habit. It's probably that something that's so ingrained
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of automatic happening. Again, no malice, just doing it over and over again. But as soon as you called it out, you put a flag on that and
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, man, like you might want to check that,
Yeah.
right? And you might have done that person a huge favor, right?
Mm-hmm.
For all you know, you stopped doing it to you and anybody else,
Yeah.
right? And then for you, right, like looking at it the other way and saying, maybe broken, but two languages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that mean? The job market, helping people out in the community, right? It makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I've discovered even with my Spanish, people that really needed help never made fun of me about my Spanish. Like,
Right.
no, I understood.
Yeah, it's
You-
nothing to do with
Yeah,
right?
you helped me out. You took that time to really help me out. You're trying.
Yeah, it'll be like going back to the example I gave, right, of being criticized because you're dressed a particular way.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, you teach math, yes or no? Okay, I don't care. Just teach
Yes.
it, right?
Yeah, it's just so interesting, you guys, and you're probably listening and you're like, oh my god, you're thinking of all these other examples that
Right.
have gone in your head, and you're like, most of it, people think it's like they're just hating, right? We let haters hate. That's what we just got to understand. And I think some of our confidence won't be on display because we are so obsessed in making everybody happy and
Right.
satisfying people that we get bothered, like, oh, we gotta, I just like, how come I didn't get invited, or how come they don't like me? And I finally realized, and again, this was all my realizations have come through conversations with many individuals. It wasn't like I was this genius and I just thought of this by myself. No, people have talked with me, and you know, I got the conversation with like, listen, people are always going to hate on you, Veronica. It doesn't matter how nice you are. You're not gonna, you're not gonna satisfy everybody, and not everybody's gonna be your friend.
Right.
First of all, I have too many friends, I realize, so it's cool. It's cool. I'm good with that, what I got. And then also, the comment was, why are you thinking about this at home,
Right.
about these people, when they're at their house, not thinking about you?
Right.
And so it was a light bulb, because anytime I hear anyone talk, if anyone, I hear a lot of shit talking on me sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, whether it's at work or in personal life. It's fine. I actually take it as a compliment, because I'm like, that's so cool. You guys were thinking about me.
Thinking about me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wasn't thinking about you, not to be messed up, but like, I'm at home handling my own business with my family. I don't have time. You don't cross my mind. It's not a bad thing. It's just that's the way my mentality changed.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to that self-care, right?
Yeah.
Take care of you, take care of who you are, and then everything else, it's kind of irrelevant, right? I mean, who cares what people think of the way you're dressed and the way you speak and the way you do things? Are you doing the best thing every day, best thing you can? Then that's all I'm at. And if everybody's hating on you, you know what? There's like 8 billion people out there in the world.
Yeah.
You just find new friends, man.
Exactly.
And that community, when you find healthy individuals, just one other person that has the same kind of synchronized mentality, it just makes a big difference, right? Yeah, we all deserve good things, right? And if that group with whom you are right now, it's not supportive for whatever reason, then maybe just find somebody else. Right?
Yeah, and distance yourself, even if it's from distancing yourself from family members. We're not saying to like cut them out of your lives, but you need that space of energy where you're not feeling brought down.
Right.
If you feel, and everyone listening is going to know what I'm talking about. There's some people that trigger you.
Mm-hmm.
And if every time you come across this person and you immediately, as soon as you come in the room, you start becoming self-conscious or doubting yourself or just this uneasy feeling, that is a negative environment to be around. And when because I think people think about like, oh, negative environment means like someone is so toxic that it's abusive. As far as people think physically, they think of all these really bad things that are actual actions that we can see. Where in reality, it's like, no, it can be, a relationship that is that it's toxic, but it has nothing else is on display. You just feel that negative energy, and that's where you should distance yourself.
Yeah, planting those seeds, right?
Yeah.
Of being uncomfortable or doubting yourself, and it happens, right? And sometimes it's people you've known for a long time. Sometimes it's people you just met. But again, going back to the same thing, it's a constant, looking into yourself and see where you are, right? The more you grow, the more you're going to realize, you know what, that relationship I had with that person, it's probably not the best thing anymore, right? Maybe it helped me then, but right now I'm in a different place, right? And same thing goes with jobs, same thing goes with your surroundings.
Yeah, and also it's like, now I'm a confident person, but I also welcome constructive criticism.
Right.
And this is something I teach in my critical thinking. We talk about the word criticism for criticize, because it was really, criticism is essentially a positive thing. It was, it was meant to give you constructive criticism to, help construct, and just some ideas. Because for sure, I will be the first one to admit that like a lot of my ideas, I just throw them out.
Right.
And I don't think they're necessarily the best. I was just trying to come up with anything.
Right.
So I am always welcome to the room of constructive criticism. But the problem is most people, they use it in such a negative way that people don't know how to distinguish the two anymore. So they don't know, maybe you're like, and if in the beginning, if you're trying to say, hey, I'm going to get rid of all these, relationships, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, I will be right because I'm going to trust myself. Yes, trust yourself, but also allow that room for constructive criticism. When, you'll eventually start to realize when it is malice, when it is done, bad, and when it's, or when you're probably like, that probably wasn't the best thing I did. I probably could have done it a little bit different. And I guess that's the whole thing of accepting too, that we're not always right.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? And I think that's also a really that's a byproduct of what a confident person is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a confident person, when presented with criticism, will not immediately take it as an attack, right? It
Yeah.
will take it as, okay, well, let me look into this, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not always right, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I learned from my mistakes in the past, and I think that's a really valid point, right? There's people who, as soon as you say, hey, man, you could probably do that a little different. What are you talking about? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that immediately there's that, like, um, there you've essentially triggered something that is, it's not confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lack of confidence,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, but that's a very, very valid point. Really good point.
Now, most times I'm going to tell you all too, as much as I got all my ish together as I think, right? I really don't. I feel like I got a lot of work to work on myself. I don't go around talking to people about, I don't go offer my opinions to people. Like
Right.
I stood up to that one individual because it took me a lot of self talking to myself, like this person, I refuse for them to let me,
Right.
bring me down. But at the same time, I don't just go around and be like, yo, dude, what you're doing is crazy. What is wrong?
Right.
I don't do that. And the reason being is that then that's where I cross the line of my confidence turning to like, oh, Veronica knows the best. And it's like, no, yes, that may be right for me, but I always have to remember that what is right for me doesn't mean it's right for everybody because
Right.
we all have different paths, right?
Definitely.
And so it's like that's why I don't go offer my opinions to people. I honestly won't say anything. I usually just listen, and I will only say anything if they ask. And a lot of times too, I won't offer that much advice because I know people are not they don't want to hear it. And I can see an individual who's not at that level that doesn't want to hear it. They just need someone to listen to. And I think that's where we
Right.
cross the line a lot of times when we're talking to people.
Yeah, definitely. I think the good sign of a good sign of a good leader is the ability to listen to people, right?
Yeah.
And to know kind of distinguish when it's like my time to listen versus my time of speaking, right? And I think there are those individuals who either never speak up or never stop talking, right? That's still a kind of a reflection of maybe a habit, right?
Yeah.
Of that lack of confidence, of not knowing. It's almost like knowing how to dance or how to box, right? Like you kind of how to slip in and out uh, and switch roles, right? And
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, well, it's my time to listen now,
Yeah.
right? Like it's my time to learn from this person, right? This person can teach me something,
And sometimes we don't agree,
right?
but it's okay.
And that's actually real good too, right? To be able to say no. We've come at this point where we can't. That's
Yeah.
cool, right? And that's perfectly fine too.
I think that's the hardest part when people are talking. Their talking turns into discussions, which then turn into arguments.
Right.
And it's because people can't understand how come you don't see it the way I see it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where it gets really complicated. And the, spoiler alert that everybody won't see it the way you see it. And that's okay. That's what makes us unique and different. And it helps us. I try to surround myself with people that value the same things I do, but I also try to include some people that have different opinions than I do because it keeps me on check to not, like the world functions a little bit differently. It's not
Right.
only the way Veronica sees it. So
Right.
it helps me.
Yeah, it's a constant challenging of ourselves. I think that's kind of what you're doing, right? Like you
Yeah.
challenge your views, challenge what you're thinking, and yeah, if you only hang out with the people who are always agreeing with
Yeah,
you,
like-minded people.
yeah, then it's gonna that's your circle is only going to go that far, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, before we leave, the last thing I want to talk about in this confidence of our subject is I think my brother really taught me this. When you're in a room full of people, or he's had different jobs and so have I, he started building up that confidence where he knew that he was the best for this thing, or he knew his idea was great and people were not listening. And as I progressed through my careers, I started realizing that, because especially growing up in first generation, I'm a first generation student, and I was taught much differently, not to speak up and not to do this, and know your place and all these different things, right? That I started realizing that all these like highly educated, very well paid people didn't know what the hell they were talking about, you know? And then I started seeing people in rooms like, I can't believe you're in this position, or I can't believe that like you got hired. Like not in a like I'm not saying that I hate people or anything like that. Sometimes it comes off that way, but it's like I started realizing that these people were not smarter than me. And I guess that's the point that I'm trying to get off, is that a lot of times, because we lack that confidence, we begin to think that people are smarter than us. And I always tell people that, no, I'm not smarter than anyone. And I don't think anybody in this world is necessarily smarter than me. And you're like, no, Veronica, like there's geniuses in this world. There's definitely smarter people than you. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about IQ. If somebody tells me what your IQ, is, first of all, that test was racist, but that's a different topic. Okay. But I'm talking about like, just because, a lot of times we like to attach our intelligence to a score or to a GPA or to a school. Yeah, like we prestige, like, oh, I went to Harvard. Get out of here. I don't give a damn you went to Harvard, right? Doesn't make you smarter than me. And so I think people confuse the intelligence with like things you put like, on your resume as far as like paper wise. Oh, I accomplished this, I accomplished that. When we're talking about like displaying yourself on the resume, it's not necessarily having to talk about the places you attended all the time. It's talking about what you bring to the table, because having, getting a degree from Harvard and getting straight A's, I don't see that as intelligence. I'm just thinking, wow, that, that's cool, but that's probably like a privileged life you lived. I feel people bring more quality to the table, who've had more obstacles, because then they are a little bit more creative on how to solve things.
Right.
And so I've found myself in a lot of rooms, and I continue to find myself, well, I guess a lot of Zoom rooms now, where people are arguing and you're just like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, these people are not making any sense right now. And I usually don't say anything until someone's like, so what do you think, Veronica? I'm like, please don't ask me my opinion, because I don't know how to lie very well anymore, because I'm just too blunt of a person. But I bring this point up because a lot of times we will see somebody who has a higher degree, or we'll see somebody in the room that is in a different position. Maybe they're in a higher position, and we won't say anything because we take their word as like Bible or something like that. What they say is like better than my idea, because they have to be smarter. And we have to debunk that of smartness, and we have to take away that like, oh, you're more intelligent, because we have to see everybody as equals and as human beings. So I always say too, like, I am not better than anybody, nor am I better than that homeless person. How did I end up here versus there? I really don't know the magic trick behind that, but I can easily be there. So
kind of confusing the two of, okay, well, you have a degree from such a school. There's all sorts of stories as to why you might have that degree, right? And I think that also has to do with living in the now, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, you may have a degree from the school, or you may have all this money, or you may have all these things. That doesn't mean you can build that bridge. That doesn't mean you can solve that problem, right? That doesn't mean anything until you display that you can do the things that we need to do, right? And that's when, you have people without an education that can be great leaders and can do all these great things, right? And be CEOs and be all these things. Because a degree really, I think, shows, okay, well, you're committed. Like, if you put your mind to something, you'll get it done. Does that mean you're going to think outside the box? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you and 1,000 other people got the same degree, right? Mm-hmm. So now the question is, what makes you different? Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the whole idea of confidence, and then being humble too, like being able to say, well, it's my time to listen and to learn, right? I think that's where all of this comes up.
Yeah. Just remember that we're all human beings, and I'm not impressed by celebrities or fame or money, because I'm more impressed by people who have done great things with great obstacles in the way. I'm more impressed, like, damn, I don't know, I don't think I'm a strong enough person to do that. And people always tell me, Veronica, you're strong, and I'm like, no, like seriously, I don't think I could have done that if I was put in that situation. And so I'm impressed with stories like that. Those people impress me.
Right.
I'm not impressed with, again, I'm not impressed with fame and all that, because again, we're all just regular people
Mhm.
that just happen to be in those positions. So
Right.
if you can think that way, and the reason why I think that's so important, if you can think that we're just regular people, and you can just start seeing everyone around you as a regular person, that their money, their, like we're talking about, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
They're just a regular person. If you can literally see everybody like that as a regular person, it's going to help you out so much, because now you're like, listen, you're
Yeah.
just a regular person. You make mistakes too. Cool. I can see that. So that way, when they try to shut you down, or they try to tell you you're not that great, or your idea sucks, but you know it's a great idea because you did all the studying, and you just know that this person's turning you down for no reason, right? Just besides because you are who you are. And you see them as a regular person, that's where my confidence comes
Yeah.
at. I see everybody as a regular person, and so I know that everyone cries. This is why, and why, people are like, how do you know that? Well, you know what? There's a lot of rich, famous people who are depressed and who have struggled and who committed suicide and all these different things. Why? Because they're regular people with regular feelings. Their feelings get hurt too. They're human. And so when you see people that way, I know that, like, you're just a regular person. And
Yeah.
so you can hurt the way I hurt too. Not that I'm going to try to hurt you. I don't try to do that. But it helps me know that, I know I can accomplish anything I want to, because they're regular people too.
Yeah, no difference. Yeah, I think there's a philosopher that said at the end of the day, when we all die, we're just bones, right? We all go
Yeah.
back to the same box, right? And so when you see, that's a really good point, right? When you see everybody else as your equal, it's like, well, if they can do that, I can do it,
Yeah.
right? If they can do that, I can do it too, right? Instead of saying, well, they must be somehow special, so I can't do it.
Exactly.
Right?
So let's get rid of that hierarchy, y'all. We're all just regular people. I'm gonna bring out some Arrested Development and say we're all everyday people. And think of it that way. So start there. I know a lot of you are listening in, and we have lots of conversations, and it all builds up. You can't just have confidence without conquering your fears first, and looking at your self doubt. That's be our one of our conversations. And again, it's very easy. Doesn't matter how confident of a person you get to, you can easily be triggered at any moment to spiral out of control and lose all that confidence, even with just one person that brings you to that. So that's why you constantly, every day, have to wake up, and it's a mental battle to tell yourself, like you've mentioned many times, Jorge, I choose to be happy today. I choose to do well today, and do what it takes. What does it take to get there? And that's one thing that you'll have to figure out, is what it takes to get there.
And you're worth it.
Yes.
Whatever it takes, you're worth it.
Beyonce songs help me get there, but that's just a little plus. Well, again, if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe, and just pass the word on. We're just trying to get people, if you have questions, you like, listen, I've been struggling with this part, send us a message at playingitsafe000@gmail.com, or on our social media platforms. We're here. We just want to know people that you matter. We all care about you. So thank you all for listening. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye now.